clinic. I'm a reenactor. And I used historical reenactment in the classroom for 36 years to breathe some life into the subject of history, for my students, and try to show them that it's not as dead as the people we were studying. So to that end, I'd dress for the time periods, and I'd bring stuff in, and I'd have music going in the background that was appropriate to the era and the culture we were studying. Well, I'm not in the classroom anymore. And that means I've got to repurpose myself. And since I also have a lot of garb at home, got to put that to use. And I decided I would start exploring California history because that was a subject that I really didn't get to cover with the way my curriculum was set up. So here I am exploring California history, going to the different places and dressing for each of the eras that I'm covering. So I started covering the missions, went through all 21, actually 23 of those in California, and the Asistencias and the Presidios, and then I came across a thread about banditos and outlaws showing up in saloons that were inside secularized missions. So I started chasing that for a while, and I'm still planning to get back to that. But I noticed there was a common thread in a lot of my California stuff, and that was about the impact of the Mexican War. So now I'm chasing the Mexican War. And I've already done 3 videos of the Mexican War in California, and this will be the 4th. I was down in San Diego before, and it looks like I have to go back because I need to take a look at a couple of incidents down there, including a major battle, the Battle of San Pasqual. So I hope you stick with me on my journey. With so few American forces in the new Fort DuPont, this was too much of a temptation for the Californios, who retook the fort in a very short time. I don't know if they renamed it, and they managed to hang on to it until about the end of October, because that's when Commodore Stockton appeared in port with his ship, the Congress, and he immediately retakes the place, and it gets renamed Fort Stockton. And San Diego is getting to be a bit more reinforced. However, there are still problems. There's a siege outside of the Pueblo by Californios, and they're attempting to starve the Americans out. Okay, now that things are actually starting to fall apart in Southern California, because there's the tug of war over what used to be the Presidio in San Diego, and also American troops which took over Los Angeles got chased out of Los Angeles. Fremont is ordered to come to Monterey again, and he's going to be given a new assignment. And what he's going to do is he's going to go on to San Juan Bautista to carry out that assignment. Fremont's going to return to the area of mission, San Juan Bautista. There was a description I read calling this Fremont's shenanigans. Well, over the next couple of weeks, he's going to be gathering forces for his California battalion and also gathering horses and mules in order to move them south and meet up with General Kearny's forces. On November 16th, what's going to end up happening is American forces who are attempting to get a hold of a herd of horses for Fremont's California Volunteers run into some Californios, and the Battle of Natividad ensues. And during the battle, 4 Americans are killed, and as far as the Californios, no Californios died in this, but several were wounded. However, this is viewed as an American victory because the American forces were able to save the herd of horses, or steal the herd of horses, from the Californios, and those horses would allow Fremont's forces to travel and ultimately end up signing the Treaty of Cahuenga, or Treaty of Capitulation, in 1847. In the fall of 1846, the Californios mounted fierce resistance against the invading American forces in Southern California. Los Angeles had been retaken by the Californios, and they also pretty much kept American forces bottled up in the Pueblo of San Diego. Andres Pico, he's the brother of Pio Pico, the last Mexican governor. He's basically set up a base of operations here at Mission San Luis Rey. And he's being very successful at keeping the Americans inside San Diego and not roaming the countryside foraging for food. He's also got an informant in the Pueblo, his sister. And he gets word that the Americans have heard that General Kearny is marching from Santa Fe to meet up in San Diego, and he's got roughly 150 men. At this point, Commodore Stockton sends Archibald Gillespie with about 29 men, and they're gonna meet up at the Rancheria of San Pasqual. And now it's up to Andres Pico and his people to try to stop that. Okay, bottom line, as far as how people are going to interpret this. Kearny's forces, which also includes Kit Carson, and there's a number of Delaware scouts with him, and there's also slaves of some of the officers. They show up with their guys, and they're also bringing in howitzers, and there's all sorts of baggage being brought along. They are going to meet up with Archibald Gillespie from San Diego, and they're going to meet at the San Pasqual Rancheria. They merge their forces together. There's now 179 of them. Andres Pico arrives from Mission San Luis Rey, and he's got about 100 Californios, and they're pretty eager to fight because Gillespie does not have a good reputation with them. And so they set up their camps, and there's a discussion amongst the Americans of what should they do. Should they attack the Californios? Hey, maybe they ought to send a scout out to see what's going on. Or should they remember the orders and bypass this hostile group and get to San Diego, because that was supposed to be the mission. And basically Kearny gives in, he sends a scout, only the Americans are too impatient and they want to attack. Oh, by the way, I should mention the weather conditions. It's been raining off and on for a few days, so that probably means wet powder. Oh, it's also kind of dark. But about half of the Americans charge forward. Well, they're making a whole bunch of noise. The Californios hear the noise. Pico orders his men to get on their horses, and they're prepared to meet the charge. Okay, the Americans fire a volley, but now they have a problem. They're trying to reload, and they're having difficulty. These are newly issued carbines. Their powder is damp, and they're trying to mess with little percussion caps in the dark and in the fog. And after that first volley, they're having to really just pretty much draw their sabers. The lances are outdoing the sabers. And at the end of the battle, there's 19 American dead on the field. There's a couple that are wounded, and the Americans pull back to a hill. It's going to be called Mule Hill because the Californios lay siege to it. The Americans have no food. They're reduced to eating mule meat. Oh, by the way, they have no water. Things look grim for the Americans, but a scout manages to get through to San Diego, to the Pueblo. A rescue party is coming. Andres Pico gets orders, no, drop the siege, move out. Well, now, rescue party arrives. The Americans start claiming victory, at least some of the Americans do. Look, the Californios left, they ran away. No, it wasn't your skill. It was the fact that there was a rescue party that showed up, and we could tell they just left. They left for other reasons. So, in time, during a court-martial, the truth comes out. No, this was a loss, by the Americans. And the Californios, they're viewing this as a victory. And word spreads, it kind of helps boost morale, considering that for about half of 1846, they're playing defense and they're losing. So this is an important boost for the Californios. Eventually what will happen, though, is Kearny and his men will move on towards Mission San Luis Rey. Well, I'm still not done, but the end is in sight. So I hope you stick with me as I wrap up the Mexican War in California.